Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're right here on this Wednesday morning talking about managing debt with Michelle Cooner, who has so many initials after her name that I cannot keep up with them. CHFC, which is Chartered Financial Counselor, correct?
Yeah.
And FPQP, Financial Paraplanner,
Yeah. Financial paraplanner, qualified professional.
Qualified Professional.
Yeah.
And I'm Tina Hopla. I'm a marketing manager and a certified credit counselor. And today we are going to be talking about some debt management skills. So I'll go ahead and let Michelle start that.
Well, Tina, whenever you hear the term, and I know since you do financial coaching and credit counseling, what is when someone comes to you and says, what is debt management? What are the kind of the ideas that they have that is included with that?
Well, a lot of times people just think debt management means debt payoff, complete debt payoff, and being debt free, um, rather than managing the debt that you're going to have in life. I mean, in this society, we're going to have debt, don't you think? So,
And I think that's a pretty common misunderstanding because there are a lot of programs out there, a lot of systems that say, to be debt free or to manage your debt, you need to have no debt, pay it off fully, use cash, never use a credit card. They're really, really bad words. And but instead, most of us are going to have a mortgage. We may end up having a car payment. But and that's where I think people get a little bit taken back, because if you already have a mortgage, you already have a car payment, maybe you have a little bit of credit card debt, it seems like this program isn't right for me, or debt management isn't right for me, because I'm already in this and there's no way I'm going to be able to pay all this off in 3 years. So I think that there's a common misunderstanding about that. And I like how this slide actually brought this up where it says debt management. And I wanted to put mental, because that's really what it is. It's kind of like mentally managing your debt as well, and just kind of getting in that mind reset about what debt means to you. Because when we boil it down, it's just creating a plan to manage what you owe and make it more efficient and effective. As I mentioned, most people are going to have a mortgage. And there are things that are good, like the mortgage, and bad. And we call these productive and non-productive debts. And that's mainly because for a mortgage, I mean, you're going to have to live somewhere. So either you rent or, well, you buy. And if you're renting, that's not productive. You're putting money out there, you're renting a place to live. Whereas if you had a mortgage, you're doing the same thing. You're spending money on that, but it's building equity. And oftentimes housing or a property will increase in value over time. So it's kind of like a productive investment as well. Another good debt or good idea of debt may be, for instance, a car loan. I know that we preach that you should save up money for a car and not buy it until you have that money. But for me, what I ended up doing was I got such a good rate on a car loan, even though I had money in the bank that I could have bought that car outright. I decided that I was earning more by leaving my cash in that account and then making the payment from that account and taking that loan out, because the loan was 0.9% and I knew I was guaranteed 3.5% on my checking. Why not? I'm earning almost 2.5% by leaving it in there and making that payment out of it. So there are ways that you can manage the debt, and we consider that that it is a loan, that it is productive, and it is good. On the
so
flip side of
a kind
that,
of production. Oh, I'm sorry. A little
okay.
bit of productive debt. You have to kind of decide really if it's productive or not productive.
Some of the bad debt, what we consider non-productive debt, are things that maybe we're talking about, like credit cards, um, furniture loans, appliance loans, department store cards. We can argue whether a 0%, and I know we talked about this yesterday a little bit, Tina, whether a 0% deal on, say, furniture or an appliance where they have like 0% for 24 months or 18 months, whether that's a good deal or not, because we can look at that as the car example that we said. If you have it and you're earning money on the account, then is it a good deal? I mean, instead of paying all that money out of the account to purchase in cash, what if I get the 0% loan and I'm leaving that in there to kind of grow when I'm just making the payments out of here? And we're going to look at in just a second how those can really mess you up if they're not really managed well. But if you can, I would be willing to throw that in the gray area. There are some strategies for paying off debt. And I did a poll on here last time when we did some debt payoff strategies. What do you think the 3 top are? Like the 3 options we really look at?
Well, I would think paying off a balance that is, kind of low, maybe a balance that has a really high interest rate. That might be another way. And maybe just one that you've had for a long time, you just don't want to think about anymore because it bugs you.
And really, that's which strategy is right. Excuse me. What strategy works best is, well, the one that works best for you to get you motivated. We do see that paying off the highest interest rate one is an option, lowest balance, and then that one that, just annoys you the most. We use an example of like you took your ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend on a weekend getaway and you put it on a card and then y'all broke up shortly after. That could be one that really annoys you, even if it is the highest balance or lowest balance or highest or lowest interest rate. You just want to get rid of that one. Then fine, pay that one off first and then reprioritize which one would be next. We do see that the highest interest rate one is the most popular to tackle next. And that's fine if it's not always the highest balance as well. You would really want to run the numbers on those. And just as an example, let's say that you have a low balance loan, let's say $2,500, and it's also the lower interest rate, but your higher balance and higher interest rate, let's say it's $12,000. Well, that's going to make you stretch out both payments. So you're paying more on that higher interest, higher balance when you could have knocked out that lower balance rather quickly. Whether it's going to save you more or less in interest, you would just have to amortize it and look at those numbers, and we'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But it also, if tackling that the lowest balance one, may keep you a little bit more motivated too. When you see progress, we're kind of weird like that as humans. When we see progress, it motivates us to do more and better. So that's why the lowest balance one may be an option for you. It's really your personality. So before you try to tackle any debt, it's important that you don't get in more debt. And that can be mitigated by establishing an emergency fund. Start small. If you have nothing saved right now, try to set a goal of maybe $1,000. And once that has been established, then you can look at which debt strategy to begin the payoff.
And we went over that a couple weeks ago in our Wednesday morning. So probably have a copy of that available at some point as well. But
absolutely
get that before you start going down to the debt. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back. You're going to have to use the debt again to get
an
to that
example.
goal.
And we had this when we talked with someone for financial coaching. I would say maybe a year ago. I was so impressed with the spreadsheet that they brought in. I mean, they were balancing or budgeting to the penny and then doing like net cash flow carried over to the next week. And they were doing this on a weekly basis and keeping the spreadsheet. And he just wanted me to look at it to see if, there was anything that really stood out that I might change. And I told him, I said, you're doing fantastic, but where's your emergency savings? Do you have a savings account somewhere that you've already established? And he said, no, we've just been, for every dollar we have left over, we are putting it towards debt. And that was a big red flag, because if something happened and if they needed a new tire or, vehicle repair or a medical bill, that even just, it could be a copay that you're not, scheduled, or you're not budgeting for a copay and medication. And that could, run you upwards of $100 sometimes. And so do you have that money set aside to cover that, or are you going to be scrambling and having to, figure out another way to pay that? And oftentimes when we are not prepared, we don't make the best decisions. So that's definitely a reason to establish that emergency fund. One of the things that we look at, and not many people consider this, is their debt to income ratios. And this is really big when we look at the possibility of refinancing loans to get lower interest rates, or consolidating to be, maybe consolidate our debt to make it a little bit more efficient and our payment strategies more effective. But without knowing what your debt to income ratios are, you really don't know what options you have available. So one thing that we look at is the non-mortgage consumer debt. And the goal that you want to aim for on that is to be your non-mortgage debt, credit cards, vehicle, student loans, is going to be a max of 20% of your net income. So this is your bring home income. There's another ratio, the front end ratio, which looks at just your mortgage. So if you are renting a house or renting an apartment or a house, this wouldn't apply to you. And that is going to be 28% max of your gross income. So this is your gross income, not the bring home income. And then we have the back end ratio, which includes all of your debt. So it kind of pulls both of those two first ones that we talked about together. And that's going to be no more than 36% of your gross income as well.
Okay.
Now, what's one that we often see that not many people think about?
Oh, well, like how much you have available, how much you have on it compared to how much you have available. So, and like if you have one card that you have a high balance and it has you only got this much left on the end of it. You could probably explain.
We look at not only the balances, but we look at limits, we look at availability, we compare those to income, we compare not just the balance to your income, but we look at balance to limits as well. And that's done on not only on a total of your credit cards, but also on a per card basis. And that's what most people don't realize. And we get that question quite a bit, because they'll say, well, I paid off my card at the end of the month, but my credit score, dropped by 2 points. And that's one of the first things I look at. If everything else being the same, did you make a lot of charges that month? And if you did, when did the credit bureau look at that versus the date that you paid it off? Because it'll be on that per card ratio and not just on the total. And we're going to look at that because that is kind of a little bit wonky. So let's say that you have a credit card that has a $10,000 limit and you have a balance of $2,500. Well, the ratio on that particular card would be 25%. Let's say you have a second card that has a $3,000 balance and a $10,000 limit. Well, you'd have 30% ratio. So the total of those together would put your total balances at $5,500 and your total limits at $20,000, putting you at a 27.5% ratio. Now, let's say that we take the same dollar amount. You still have $5,500 in debt, but you put it all on one card. Well, now you have a 55% ratio on the one and a 0% ratio on the other. You still have a total of 27.5%, but that 55% is going to ding you because we're looking at a max of only 30%. And so if you are doing any type of excessive spending on a card, I know that when I did some home remodeling, I was throwing balance, all kinds of charges on my card, knowing that I had it in the account. I was going to pay it off. But if I don't pay it off immediate, or if I get that balance up too high and they check it at that point, then it's going to trigger and possibly reduce my score. So how you can mitigate this is make multiple payments throughout the month. If you know you're getting close to that point, go ahead and make a payment, and then you can make the rest of the payment later on. But that can really help your score. We also have people, when we talk about managing debt, is to look at the actual cost of what that debt's going to cost you. So let's say that you are borrowing $1,000 on a credit card. And let's say that it's about 22%, which is somewhat average for a decent credit score. That, if you made just the minimum payments of $40 a month, it's going to take you 78 months to pay that off. And it'll end up costing you $1,660. Now, would you be willing to pay for whatever item that is? Would you be that cost you $1,000? Would you be willing to pay $1,660? And odds are probably not. And so that's one thing that you would need to look at. Just because you can afford that minimum payment doesn't mean that you can afford the debt. And
that's
this is
where calculators. Sorry, that's where those calculators come in handy. Like, if you're going to use your credit card for $1,000, and you know that you have $100 to put on it every month, you're still going to be paying more than $1,000, but you know that you're not going to be paying $1,600 because you're paying more than the minimum. And
exactly,
calculators can help you with that to know like how much you're actually paying, the actual cost of using that card.
And that's really good to you, and especially if you aren't able to, if you don't have that saved. Let's say that you have a refrigerator. And I think we talked about this yesterday when we were saying, when is it kind of an okay time that you put something on a card if you don't have that saved up? And, a dishwasher, you can wash dishes with some soap and water in your sink. You don't necessarily have to have a microwave. You can use a stove and heat stuff up, or an oven and bake stuff. Even, I would go out on a limb and say, yes, washer and dryer is convenient, but there's a laundromat. But a refrigerator is something that, yes, I need a refrigerator so we can keep food in the house. That may be something that you can do a loan for, but the other stuff are conveniences. Those are all conveniences. A TV is a convenience. But one thing that we look at that we see often are those furniture loans, the appliance loans, the things that say, oh, okay, well, it's 0% interest for, 18 or 24 months. And I had a couple come in that actually did a furniture loan. They had some of the money in the account, but of course they bought a little bit more furniture since they were there shopping. And they ended up spending right around $3,000. And they took advantage of that 0% interest, and it was for 24 months. And so they mapped out 24 payments of that amount that they needed, and they made their last payment. But before they got that zero bill that said that it all was paid, she had mapped out 24 payments and not the full 24 months. And it goes back and it tacks on all of the interest from day one, like you never did that. And it ended up coming back saying that she owed another $2,426 after she had already paid that $3,000. And so the bad thing about that was it was at a 30% rate of interest. And now this $2,426 is also accruing a 20 or 30% interest on it as well. So that's where you see those, when we talked about those payday loans, this is often where you see those that really get you, because you understand that you're in a situation where you need it. And we had a conversation about, need versus, if you're needing to pay rent, and especially right now, a lot of people, their hours have been cut. They haven't been able to work.
Oh, that's tough, because they can be predatory. you really got to watch that, just at least with, I mean, I guess with those two, they have the explanations on them, but a lot of times they're really long, and people, you may not read it. Like you said, if you're in a desperate situation, you may not make the best choices. So the more that you can do ahead of time, the better. And at least if you understand and you're not surprised by what happens, if you have to get into some kind of debt, at least you understand that this is why this happened. So.
And that's exactly, I mean, when you're in a desperate situation and you're frantic, you don't often think logically. I was in a car wreck earlier this year. Actually, I was in two this year, but this was the first one on Valentine's Day. And one of the things that, the cops were called and EMS, and they were taking and exchanging our information. And then I went to the hospital and she went to the hospital. And when we call in to the insurance company later, they're like, okay, well, we need their information. And I tried to call the police station and the report wasn't going to be ready for a certain period of time. So we didn't know her contact information. They couldn't provide it at that point. So they had to wait the 7 to 10 days. Then the insurance company said, well, did you get photos of everything? And I'm like, no, I went to the emergency room because I was injured. No, I didn't get out and say, hang on, let me get these photos real quick. So I knew that I needed to do that. But what actually happened? No, because I was in a frantic situation. And that's often what happens with those types of things. When you're looking at predatory loans or payday loans, it's like, I need this now. I'll do anything you want. I just can't be evicted. I have a family. We need to eat. And so that's where we see that when you're desperate times, desperate measures type things. Really, to kind of sum up, it's not paying off debt necessarily. So don't be scared when you hear the term debt management. It's just managing and balancing what you have with what you need to do. Best thing to do is just create a spending plan first and foremost. You can't really make any other plan about where your money is going to go until you know what money you have. So create that spending plan and see what you're dealing with. Next, establish that emergency fund, because that you don't want to go into more debt when an emergency comes up. Prioritize the debt that you're wanting to tackle and then determine which strategy to pay that down with. Again, just because you can make a payment doesn't mean you can actually afford it. Some tips and tricks to help you save money. And I know, Tina, we talked about this yesterday. Take your card information off the autofill. I don't know how, I read this on some other blog or something that said that was one of the best things that they could have done. And I noticed that because I was sitting on the couch the other day and I was going to order, and then it said I didn't have my card saved on my phone. And when I hit the pay button, if it were on there, I would have put that pay. I mean, my order would have been like probably right now dinging. But I had to get up and get my credit card. And I was like, oh, I'll do that later. And I didn't order it. But if I had come to my computer to do it, or if I had that card in there, it would have been on the way. So removing
I think most of mine, I need to put in the little code in the back, and that usually stops me because my purse is always in the other room, or my wallet. And so unless I memorize those, which there's so many numbers we have to memorize, I'm not going to memorize that. And that is my cooling off period.
Well, I do have my code memorized, so because I only use that one card for any online stuff, which is another good thing. I mean, I only use that particular card, and that's a safety or security feature that and I always say don't use a debit card online, because if your card gets hacked, and believe me, cards get hacked frequently, then they can clear out every bit of money in that checking account. And whereas a credit card, and then you will get it back, but how many other payments are going to be rejected? What if you have your mortgage and your car payment, and then you're having to make all these calls? Whereas with a credit card, if it's not yours, you shut it off, they remove the charges, and it's pretty much done. So it's not wiping you out. Plus, it's only up to the limit. So if you have a $1,000 or $2,000 limit or a $5,000 limit on a card that you use online, and I recommend doing a low limit card for something like that and only using that card for shopping online, then it's just a safety feature. Another suggestion was, if you have, for the cooling off period, if you're going to make a purchase, and you can set this, your own limit on this, but the one that they used was anything over $100, they had to wait 1 week to see if that's something that they really wanted. Anything under $100, usually about 3 days. Make sure you allow wiggle room. As I mentioned earlier with that one, that the spreadsheet was like, budgeted every penny, there was no wiggle room. Give yourself some. We don't work to live. We don't live to work. We work to live. So throw in enough money to, order a pizza or have some entertainment or rent a movie on Amazon or something, to where you're enjoying life as well and not just fully focused on that debt payoff. I will tell you that if you do just gung-ho it and say we're only eating, our budget this month's only $20 for food, that's not realistic, and it's not going to work, and it's going to have no longevity to it whatsoever. And one of the best things, and we talked about this also yesterday, was meal planning. By meal planning, you're really looking at not just helping with the spending plan and making sure that you're not going over, but it helps you determine also what's possible. What can I pay off if I plan this and I know that I'm doing it on a weekly or 2-week basis? What types of, and keeping it under that, it really helps with knowing that I have this extra amount of money that I can prioritize to paying off debt. Right. And I think, Tina, you had some ideas about how you can, we were saying game the system, but
I game the system. Well, I think when we talked about creating a spending plan, and you're creating your meal plans in with that, that when you have the spending plan, that this is about how much you want to spend on your food, and your food may be, I'm not doing any restaurant dining out right now, but dining in a little bit, but I have those plans. But I've also been a big fan of the meal delivery kits, which you have to look at that if it makes sense for you. Because sometimes if you plan well enough, you can get the same ingredients for less, but sometimes it would cost you more, because a lot of the meal plans will send you just the spice you need, instead of having to go and buy a whole thing of tarragon, because how often do you use tarragon? I hardly ever use it, but you just get what you need, and that way you're not spending $10 on a spice that you're going to use twice a year and then it goes bad. But I gamed the system as far as with those by doing the introductory offers, and a lot of the, because as long as you keep up with it and go on the website or the app and schedule when you want them. I was getting meals for two for less than half of what they usually cost. So I have meals planned for at least 3 nights of the week that are like actual meals, rather than, okay, we're gonna have some popcorn and whatever tonight because I'm too busy to cook.
And I see a lot of people that, not just that don't really want to cook a lot, but like you said, oftentimes when you're cooking, there's so many ingredients that are needed, and by the time you go to the store and you purchase all of these different things, then either you have a surplus of it or things end up going bad. Right. And so, you have to really look at that. And we see that with a lot of single people. And it's hard to cook for one. Even if you're going to buy a package of chicken, it's like, you don't just get a chicken breast. And so you're usually buying things in where you can do multiple meals with it. And that's where meal planning comes into effect. So you're not having to run back and forth to the store. And let's face it, a lot of the curbside delivery or pickup things have a minimum. I'm not saying all of them do, but if I don't want to have to go into the store and there's like a $35 minimum, I'm like, I don't really need that. So then I end up going into the store, and odds are I'm going to end up finding something else that I probably didn't need, but you know, it's there. And so that's where meal planning and doing that ahead of time can really benefit you. Sometimes this is hard to do on your own. So we do offer those we're starting to offer financial coaching classes. We do one-on-one financial coaching already, where you can call us and schedule an appointment, and we walk you through almost a year-long process. And really, it's not a year-long process. It's a process that we chunk out some of these different strategies, the creating the spending plan, emergency savings, debt management, improving your credit score. And obviously, some of those things aren't just, completed in 1 week. It's a process. And so a lot of that is monitoring and then tacking on the next thing as we successfully accomplish another task. And so that's what we do with one-on-one. And it's just like having a fitness coach, someone that you're accountable to, that you have to check in and say, this is how it went. These are the issues that I had. And have you had anyone else that has had this issue as well? I suggest not going on Facebook and asking for in search of advice, because you will get anything from anybody. And there are a lot of armchair financial advisors out there that, well, I did this, or my third cousin's neighbor's boyfriend's kid did this. It's like, don't listen to that. Ask for a professional. But we are going to be offering those financial coaching classes for those that do want some guided. It's kind of like the guided DIY of finance, where we're going to kind of go through these different categories more at length and answer questions and do some worksheets and really structure it out. So, I know we're doing these, we're scheduling them every 2 weeks. And that was going to be a really interesting one for couples. And I liked, instead of sharing your heart and bank account, what did you name it?
Talking money with your honey.
Talking money with you. I need to change that on here. But some of the things that we will be talking about, not only how you can merge finances, but also we're going to touch on very briefly on blended families.
It's kind of, you were talking about the coaching, having like a coach for working out, or even like food coach, nutrition coach. This is a lifelong thing. It's, what they say with dieting, you can't do anything that is not, you can't do every day. Like the people on The Biggest Loser, they do that thing and then they gain the weight back, because that's not something that you can do every day. And that's what we try to do as being your personal planning partner, is what you can become when you put these things consistently into your life.
So it's more of the lifestyle change versus just a quick fix. And that's right. Where you get, if you do that and do this mindset reset type of thing, then you do get that. And it becomes easier. At first, we're not going to lie. I mean, to say that I need to sit down and plan all this stuff out and calculate all these things, or gather all of this information and data and really work on it. Yeah, first it's gonna suck, but eventually it becomes easier. We have some really cool tools that you can use, and especially with, anything that we're talking about, whether it's spending plan or paying off debt. You head over to our website, personalmoneyplanning.com, and you click this new Your Money Guide. You can register for a free account. You just click here to register, and you pick your own username and password. We won't bother you and send you a whole bunch of stuff. We will send you our newsletter. That's the price that you have to pay. That's a ticket item on this. But what this does, if you head over and you sign up and do this My Blocks is what it's called. This is it's set up like Netflix, where it has these different tiles, and they tackle different financial issues. And not just financial issues. I mean, let's face it, everything revolves around finances. Whether you're going to the grocery store, whether you're tithing at church, whether you're, even if you're staying at home and you're a complete introvert, you still have electricity or a place or a roof over your head. So that deals with money as well. But it looks at different things, whether, sometimes When do you draw Social Security? Well, I don't know. This one over here can help you possibly determine how to optimize that. And so, and it shows you that all of these little things will give you a time that says it takes about 2 minutes, looks at healthcare, life expectancy, long-term care costs. That's a huge one if you're getting ready to retire. It also looks at paying off credit cards, paying off loans, college loans, and it will show you just by putting a little bit of information in how much you should be saving for an emergency fund. I know we get that question all the time. Do I just need $1,000? Do I need 3 to 6 months? Some people say a year. What is good for me? Well, let's just see.
So in addition to what we were talking about today with the debt management, that can definitely help. But there's always going to be different pieces to the puzzle, to your financial puzzle, like we have on our Facebook page. So this is just one step of all the different things we're going to be talking about in the coming months.